Hello there, and welcome to the CP7 podcast. My name's Palm.
My name's Andy.
And together, we are Chrono Passion 7. Hello, and welcome to episode 27. We've had a bit of a break, but we're back now, raring to go. And to all our new listeners, welcome to the show. We hope you like what you hear. And to all our dedicated established listeners, we've got so much coming up. And we have a very special announcement. But before we get into that, we're going to do a quick wristwatch check. Andy, what have you got on the wrist then?
So today I'm wearing a watch what I feel comfortable wearing in the summertime, which is my A. Barfley. It's a small little quartz watch. Actually, it could fit the theme of today's show, given its hexagonal kind of elements to the bezel on it. It's a very cool, very, very slim, not fussy kind of watch to wear. You don't feel it on the wrist. Don't feel any risk wearing it as well. So it's just a great little summer watch. So that's what I'm rocking today. How about yourself, Pam?
Today I have got my January watch, which is the Rolex Explorer 214270 39mm. It is a watch I can confirm that you can wear for a month and still want to wear it again and again. So that's what I've got on the wrist. Andy, let everyone know what this huge announcement is.
Yeah, hopefully it lives up to the hype. So, of course, we didn't drop a show last week because we were just so busy developing phase 2 of what we had within our roadmap, which was launching our very own website and new platform. So we wanted to create a more engaging way for you to enjoy the shows and the podcast. We wanted it to be more visual. We know that's extremely important. And we feel that sometimes maybe there's a disconnect from listening on your favorite podcatcher of choice and then going over to Instagram. So we wanted to put everything under just one umbrella, if you like, all directing straight to our website where you can see detailed images in higher resolution than what you're going to see on Instagram, videos as well. We have a comments function, so you can leave comments under every show, give us a lot of feedback. So we just really want to go to the next phase where we can build the community better. We can communicate easier with all our loyal listeners this way as well. So the website is, of course, www.chronopassion7.com. So super easy. We managed to get the domain which we wanted. So it'd be in the show notes. It'd be all over Instagram. It'd be very easy to find us. And that's not all. There's going to be a store on the website. And nothing is there just yet, but we do have a few things happening in the background. Do watch that space, and please let us know what kind of merch you would like us to see putting on there as well. We'd love your feedback. Really excited for this next chapter. The way we can expand this website is endless, really. So we can think of many cool things to do. We're always open to your feedback, so if you have any suggestions, then always let us know. So that's the major announcement. We're super hyped, excited.
So I just want to highlight what Andy said there. Please do give us your feedback on what you would like, but we want to know what you would want to have while you listen to the show.
Absolutely. Speaking of show, let's get into it. Gérald Genta, a huge inspiration and influence on the watch industry, an absolute legend and a legacy what will just live on in the watch industry for years and years to come, way beyond our life cycles, I believe, as well. And where does this show get its inspiration from? It's from the recently released Credor Locomotive. And yeah, it caused some mixed feelings. And I think mixed feelings with myself and Pam as well. I didn't know how to feel about it, to be honest. But we're going to get into that. But first, how can we talk about Gérald Genta without talking about the Royal Oak and the Nautilus, of course? So, Pam, what is the story with the Royal Oak?
The Audemars Piguet Royal Oak was Genta's most famous design, I would say. It was George Golay from Audemars Piguet asked Gérald Genta to create a new timepiece for him in steel without precious metal, which oozed luxury. And the Royal Oak was what he came out with. In 1972, at the Basel Watch Fair, the Royal Oak was released. And the reason why I wanted to do this spot was just I love the history behind the name. It was based on 8 ships commissioned by the British Royal Navy, the Royal Oak. And the story behind that Royal Oak, it was actually set in the Civil War in Britain. The monarchy was overthrown. King Charles I was executed. His family and everyone related to him had to flee. His son, who became Charles II, a bit of a spoiler there, was in exile and had to hide from the parliamentarians, they were called, because the monarchy was abolished. He hid in a tree, an oak tree, which won't surprise you. That's how he got away with not getting caught and not getting executed. So the name was based on 8 vessels commissioned by the British Royal Navy, named after this ancient oak tree in the 17th century. Also, the shape of the case was based on a deep-sea diver's helmet with 8 screws. To keep up with the nautical theme, you wouldn't go diving with it, but that's what it's supposed to represent. And then the other one, Andy, are you familiar with this Patek Philippe model? Is it the Nautilus?
I think I've heard of a Nautilus, and again, there's always an interesting story, and it's a bit of a joke. I think I get called Captain Nemo, for we all have these funny little characters. I think it's because of a double-breasted blazer, right?
Check out Andy's picture on the website. That's Captain Nemo right there.
Yeah. So that's where the name comes from. So it was inspired by Jules Verne's famous 1870 novel, which was called The 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And you can really see the inspiration. It was inspired by that vessel and the porthole with a rounded octagonal bezel, and the ears, of course, on the famous ears of the Nautilus, which represent the hinge on one side and then the closure and lock on the other side. Yeah, definitely a nautical theme to both watches, which is no surprise with them being sports watches and at that time dive watches, right, to a degree. So quite fascinating, quite interesting, I think, there.
Another thing about that, yeah. So they say the Royal Oak saved ultimately the watch industry, and that Royal Oak tree saved the British monarchy. So there's something about the Royal Oak which seems to save people and things. But enough about that. Let's talk about this Credor Locomotive. It's a reissue which was made to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Credor, which is related to Seiko. Original was released in 1979, and as you can see, it's an aesthetic that's quite, we'd say in the UK, Marmite. It's very, you like it or you hate it. It's very black or white. There's no grey. You can see it has the style cues of the Royal Oak and the Nautilus, like the octagonal case, and it has the 6 screws in the bezel. The Royal Oak was created in 1972, the Nautilus 1976. This was released in 1979. So it kept in with the decade, that very 70s look, and was the next progression in style of the watch for Genta.
So that's the background of how the Credor Locomotive came to be, and of course the reissue. And let's talk about the watch itself and our first impressions. I think when it was first released, I didn't like it. And I'll be honest, I'll put my hands up. I wasn't familiar with the Locomotive at all. Probably like many an enthusiast, this kind of thing happens.
Yeah,
yeah,
things,
the 222. You didn't know it exists. I mean, it was crazy because I remember checking Chrono 24 to see what the older ones were going for, because it sparks curiosity, right? And there was a few on there. There was maybe 5 or 6 just at the time of this launch, and they were sitting around 5K, 6K. Like, okay, that's pretty cool for and now vanished. Not a single one there since this release. So it says it all. It says the power of the Genta name, right? When any brand re-releases such an iconic Genta design within their catalogue, then it certainly causes a spark with the vintage models as well. But my first impression was I don't like it. The bracelet looked too wide for the watch itself, and I thought it looked a bit weird. It's kind of octagonal, but rounded, and I don't know. And then a bit like Marmite, a reference I've used with an old friend in the UK is like Marmite twiglets. It's like you have them, like a typical thing in England, in a British pub, you have a pint of beer and you share a packet of crisps. And I found myself eating these Marmite twiglets and I hated them. But like, they're so bad, I can't stop tasting it because I'm just, how can it taste like this? And it's a bit like that with watches sometimes. You're like, it's something about it underlying that I actually do like. So that's kind of where I am now. It's a Marmite watch, but it's a Marmite what I'm starting to like the flavour of, if that makes any kind of sense whatsoever. But What were your initial impressions, Pam? I think somewhat similar, right?
Yeah, so again, I'd never heard of it. Like the 222, you hear about these watches, and then you first see them, and you think, okay, well, what's the big deal? And but this one, it wasn't what's the big deal. It's what the hell's going on here. The bracelet's detached from the case. It's a kind of strange. Is it round? Is it octagonal, ovalish? Even the octagon is not a sharp octagon. It's very rounded. It's just the case looks too small for the bracelet. And I'm quoting Zach Weiss from Worn and Wound. He says the case is attached to the bracelet by a couple of flanges. That's what the links look like. The bracelet had been made for another watch, and the case had not been made for that bracelet, I would say, because of the gaps. There's a lot of gaps in the design, sharp edges on the ends of the bracelet. And I was like, I just don't get it. It was literally me thinking, I just don't get it. And then you hear about the original coming out. Then you hear about this as an anniversary edition. And then you actually hear something very interesting. When Genta designed this, he wanted to see this to completion. There's many designs which he started and put out there and let the brand finish. This one he did with Seiko, he loved so much. He actually wanted to see it to completion, and he had a big thing for this watch. That's why we call this show, Is This Genta's Guilty Pleasure? Because when you look at it at first, you just wonder what's going on, and then you kind of see it again and again, and then you start to think, oh, okay, that's quite a journey of appreciation of a watch which you absolutely disliked when you first saw it. So, Andy, I'm guessing you had the same journey.
Yeah, I think we've both had the same journey. It's unusual, but I like it. It's grown on me over the more times I've looked at it, the more I've started to accept it.
Yeah.
And it's like a piece of art, right? At a certain degree. And Gérald Genta was famous for his art as well, not just watch design. And that's where you start to see the artiste maybe in these designs, and you just start to appreciate it as contemporary design. And I just think it's something quite oddly beautiful, is the best way I could put it, just speaking truthfully. I really like it. I do really like it. It's now in titanium. The original was in steel. I think that's a nice change of material, because Gérald Genta was all about pioneering, and using titanium is a relatively new steel of today, if you like, the new stainless steel of today. So it makes sense for it to be released that way. And yeah, it's kind of sparked this whole show to pick 3 of our favourite Genta designs from over the years. But do you have any closing thoughts on the Locomotive before we get into our 3 picks?
It takes a while to get used to it and to actually end up really appreciating it. At the price as well, which is $12,000, 14,000 euros, it's what you'd expect. It's a Genta titanium watch from Credor. Credor don't do things cheap, not this current iteration of Credor. And they put a lot of thought and effort into what they make. I mean, even the crown at 4 o'clock, the date at 3 o'clock, these are things that traditionally people would not generally like, but it just all goes. And that dial, apparently it's supposed to take inspiration from, hence the name, a steam locomotive. I don't know, the texture on that dial, it's a sunburst, almost textured dial. You don't normally get many cool looking black dials. Sunburst is about as good as you get normally. I just think it was a slow burner in my mind, but it's definitely a beautiful watch. I'm not sure about the automatic at 6. I'm not sure if that really needed to be there, but yeah, I like it. I like it a lot.
You've triggered me with the automatic at 6. It didn't bother me until you said it, and it would leave such a purity to the dial, which I would enjoy if it wasn't present. But it would have been a really crisp, clean-looking watch. Without that, I do agree. No, I like it. It's really grown on me. Even though the original was a quartz, I would kind of like one, but I imagine the hype has kind of priced me out of finding one of them now realistically. So that's kind of a strange journey from, I remember in all the group chats kind of being like, what the hell is this, to I kind of want one now. Where can I find one?
I was getting bombarded as well. What the hell is this? And then people were joking about it. Yeah, after a couple of days, the dust had settled and everyone was like, wow, this is amazing.
This is cool. Yeah. So let's move to our three selections. So as always, we like to do a bit of a challenge. So Palm's picked three of his favorite Gérald Genta designs, and I have done the same. So without further ado, let's get into some of our favorite and maybe some lesser known and maybe some more iconic Genta designs.
So how I've categorized mine is one, the one that everyone would know. Secondly, the well, I never category, but okay, that's interesting. And then the third one is, wow, I did not know that existed. We hope. That's the aim with our 3 picks. A wild card, number 3, as usual.
Yeah, of course, the last one is always a wild card. My logic behind it was, I know some of the watches I've chosen, maybe not everybody knows, but I think they should know about. So that would lead to my first one. And this is more popular now, but it wasn't so known in the past and in recent years even. So it's the Universal Geneve White Shadow. It's a proper Gérald Genta design. It was designed back in 1966, and in this period of time, there was a race in the 70s to produce the thinnest wristwatches. And with the innovation and design from Universal Geneve, who are renowned for the micro-rotor movement, they had 2 calibers, the 1-66 and the 2-66, which came in at, you've got to think at the time, 2.5 millimeter. It was in-house micro-rotor. This allowed the case shapes to be 6.9 millimeters in thickness, so just shy of 7 millimeter. So really slim, sleek looking sports watches. They did different iterations of the shadow. So the one which I've picked is the white shadow, but they did a gilt shadow and a golden shadow as well. Across those different ranges, you had gold plating, steel, and solid gold as well. Another interesting fact as well, part of the white shadow range, there was an ellipse design, which actually was created before the Patek ellipse. So Universal Geneve didn't copy Patek Philippe. It was the other way around. Unfortunately, Universal Geneve were taking the wrong kind of direction, and Patek were like, the ellipse is great. Let's do something with that design. So that's kind of how that played out. Now, which I'll put into the show notes, of course, as well as the ellipse design, is the classic white shadow, which has this kind of, say, pebble-like shape to it. Very smooth, very organic, very flowy, really nice Roman numerals on the dial, just clean, simple, crisp looking watch. And I just think it looks fantastic. And the crazy thing about these pieces is you can pick them up shy of 1K. And even for the ellipse reference, you can find them for around €1,200. So that's amazing. Gérald Genta design. You can have an ellipse if you so wish, or you can have the original, if you like, which is the more circular pebble-like case. And you can pick these up for less than €1,500. I think they're incredible value, incredible in-house movements. And mark my words, when Universal Geneve is relaunched, because it happens with vintage, these things are going to go crazy when the brand's relaunched, in my opinion. So if you want a piece of history while you still can, I'd certainly recommend picking one of these up in a style of your choice. There's many to pick from. I'm certainly contemplating on it. I think the great value. I think they may be coming at 20mm lugs, which is a style I am looking for at the moment. But Palm, what do you think to my pick?
I've come to notice these over the last year and a half, I'd say, especially the ellipse version. That's the one that caught my attention previously, and they're so well priced. So the hype hasn't hit Universal Genève yet, and hopefully it doesn't. But definitely the white shadow which you've shown us here with this almost cushion case, that's nice. Oh yeah, I've not seen this one before. I've seen, like I said, the ellipse shaped, which I almost bought at one point. It's difficult to find one in good condition, and if you do, it's going to cost a bit more, I guess. Great watches, great choice, great Genta design. What about this design is it that made you pick this one?
This one, so the reference image in this case, because this was the first one, this was the first iteration Gérald Genta designed, and this was really, you've got to see it from a side profile when you see the thinness of this watch. Because it's a longer profile than the ellipse, it gives the illusion of a slimmer looking piece. Honestly, it looks like a pebble on the wrist if you get it on the right angle. They're just so sleek and yet sporty. The kind of a dress watch slash sporty element to it, which I really like. I just think it looks timeless in its design. I think it's so clean, crisp. You can rock it with a strap or, in a mesh bracelet. You could really, I'd say, a bit of a strap monster due to the dial. I just think they look great. I think they look awesome.
And they're a very unassuming, not in your face style as well. It's just really slick, really sleek, under the radar. And if you want a Genta design for a nice price point, this is the one to go for. So my first pick was something a bit more well known. This is my favorite one, I would say, apart from the Royal Oak and Nautilus, of course, which is never going to happen. It's the IWC Ingenieur. And I loved looking into, one thing I love about these challenges is I love looking into watches and the history of them and what inspired their design aesthetic and how they started and how different it is from where they are now. The IWC Ingenieur was actually made originally in 1955, and it had a devilish reference of 666. Why that reference, I'm not sure. As they say, it's quite diabolical. I don't know how popular these were amongst the clergy back then, but it was designed for scientists. It was supposed to be an everyday watch. It had a Faraday cage in it, much like the Rolex Milgauss, which was released at that time. And it was supposed to be able to be worn in any working environment. So with the Faraday cage, it avoided a lot of magnetism. It didn't let any external forces impact the time telling with this watch on. And this was the new thing I learned. Genta didn't actually get involved with this until 1976. So he added his 5-screw bezel design in 1976, even though the watch was originally out in 1955. There's a big history on this. And the first version that Genta created was called the Ingenieur SL. There have been 5 previous versions to this current modern-day version, which comes with ETA movements, JLC movements, in-house IWC movements. And it just goes to show how incredible a brand IWC is as well. What do we think of IWC? We think of pilot watches. Then you look a bit deeper, then you think, okay, they've got calendars, perpetual calendars, they've got complications. Then they've got a Genta design as well in their catalogue. There's a lot going on with IWC and their range of watches. My favourite one is the modern day one, 40 millimeters in steel. It's got the integrated Genta bracelet. It's got the 5 screws in the bezel like the original Genta version. But it's the one I like has got this blue-green, it's almost checkerboard dial, and it is absolutely stunning. I've tried this on when I went to Dubai recently, and I don't know how lucky I was. The guy had all 3 of them, and he said to me, like, do you want this? I was just perusing, and he was wanting me to buy it. And if I had the money, which I didn't, I would have bought this. I just thought, wow, this is so cool. I saw it, I gave it back, which was quite tough to do. And then when we went to Watches and Wonders, we were at Vacheron. This is the funny story. So this guy came and sat next to Andy, a very, very well-dressed guy, I mean, as we all were. And you just see this blue-green dial just bursting out of his wrist. And I just looked at it, I just thought, that's the Ingenieur, isn't it? He's like, yes. And I said, that's beautiful. He's like, thank you very much. And I thought, I'm sitting here with all these amazing Vacheron Constantins, and all I'm looking at is his IWC Ingenieur. And it was just like, wow, what a watch. It's just a stunner. I'll stop talking about it, otherwise I'll take over the whole show just talking about this one dial. But at £10,500, it's a bit on the pricey side. That's what people say. But again, we don't know what goes into making special watches like this and how much they should cost us. But I think this is definitely my favorite acquirable Genta design, I would say, if I was to buy one brand new. Andy, do you remember the guy that sat next to you at the event?
I do, now you mention it, which is quite funny. I didn't spot it. I was too wrapped up in the VC, but it definitely shows how much you're into this watch. I can tell just by how you described it that it's kind of resonated, it's clicked with you. So it's one what hasn't clicked with me yet, purely because I've had very little wrist time with one, in all honesty. I've tried on some of those older references which you mentioned. They got crazy. I tried on one. I remember, I think you maybe were there. It was one of the Red Bar events, and it might have been when you were at one in Barcelona. And there was one gentleman, and he had a 45 millimeter Ingenieur. It was huge, and that was the first time I heard about the design and the Faraday cage inside and understanding the story. And I never knew it was a Gérald Genta design at that point. So it was new to me in my novice days, if you like, within the industry. I was still learning. I'm still learning every single day. And it's certainly a reference I really appreciate. I think the new reference is back where the engineer belongs. I think they did have a stage of going a bit too crazy with it, with these oversized, and then I think they had some kind of rally edition as well. A reason I know these sub references quite well because I was actually considering an engineer, even though I said it hasn't quite clicked, but it just didn't click enough for me to buy one blindly, if that's what I mean. I respect it. I know there's some great design in the pieces and within the ranges, and I know you've really got to do your research because of the various different movements I've used over the years, but I think it's just having more wrist time. I don't think I've worn one for like even 2 minutes in a boutique, so I'll just need to have that connection what you had. Once you put it on, it's like, oh, okay, it makes sense, and you just fall in
got
love.
to try it on. Yeah.
I've just not had that moment yet.
And I do think that this, which I understand is going to happen also with the Christopher Ward 12, is IWC's opportunity to make a complicated sports watch. I think this is an ideal place for them to put out calendars, moon phases, you name it, chronographs on a sports watch that will sell and that will appeal to the mass market. And again, going back to the sizes, they went crazy. They started off at 36 and then they went down to 34. And then, like you say, 45. It just went all over the place.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a roller coaster, I think, for the engineer, and I think it maybe damaged the reputation of the engineer, and that's why where we are today, it's okay. Let's go back to what it should be, refine it, and I think now it's going to be a lot more respected and have that Genta effect, if you like, on the brand and on that particular range of watch, which it deserves. It's a fantastic range. So they lost the way a little bit with the engineer, I believe, through various periods, but so it's really nice to see them back on track with a new iteration. And totally agree with you, Pam, with it's their playground now. Stick to this pleasing form factor, add chronographs. They have the great perpetual calendar now as well, what they can in-house, which they can add into that if they so wish. Would it ever happen? I don't know. Would it be cool? I think so. And yeah, it's great to see them back on track. Unfortunately, Universal Genève didn't have that same journey. They kind of were doing great things and then they lost the track and went all the way off it, unfortunately. But I'm excited to see what the relaunch of Universal Genève brings. And I'm really pleased to see the engineer back where it belongs. And that dial, the more I'm looking at it now, it's really pulling me in. It's beautiful. So great choice.
We interrupt this podcast for a very special announcement. This is for a very loyal listener, someone who's listened to us from the beginning, always promotes the podcast, and always gives us great ideas. That's Mark Bowman.
So it was Mark Bowman's 60th birthday a few weeks back, and a huge congratulations, Mark, on such a monumental occasion. And we heard you got a great gift, the Tudor chronograph, so huge congratulations on such an epic piece as well.
Congratulations on your 60th, Mark. You couldn't have got a better watch from your wife than that Tudor Panda chronograph. Awesome watch.
We now resume to your scheduled content.
Okay, that was my one that everyone knows. So, Andy, what was your second choice then?
I hope everybody knows this one, but maybe not. So my last two choices, a bit of a spoiler, but Gérald Genta, as in the brand. So he as well as helping so many other companies make some incredible timepieces, he launched his own company back in 1969. And one of the pieces what emerged from his brand was the Arena Retrograde Sport. So this is my choice. Now, there's many different iterations of the retrograde. So retro it's not a reference to being retro, vintage retro. It's a reference to retrograde. And there's different iterations. So you have, of course, the retro sport range. You have the retro fantasy, which are some of the hottest Gérald Genta watches on the market right now with the Disney characters. So it's very common to see like Mickey Mouse pointing to the minutes, or you have Donald Duck playing golf all these fun, quirky dials. And then there's also the retro classic. The cool thing with the retro classic is you get mother of pearl dials, you can have guilloche dials, you can have coin edging. So they're really, really beautiful. But the ones which I really enjoy are just the classic retro sports. Reason being, I think they look crisp, they look really clean, they have a carbon fiber style dial. And I just think it's awesome. It was the first watch as well, which was released with a jumping hour function plus the retrograde feature. You can also find the retrograde sports with some examples of just the minute hand and the jumping hour. Then there's other iterations where you have a running centiseconds as well. So there's many different variations of this. But one of my favorite is just the clean two-hander in the sense you've just got the jump hour, you've got the retrograde minute, just a clean, pure-looking dial. Put that on the stainless steel bracelet, and it's just timeless. And that's one thing what Gérald Genta has in common across most of his pieces. They just never look old. They just look timeless and brilliant. You know, this watch was designed back in 96. Early 2000s, there was some around as well. Like, depending on when different generations of the retrograde sport, for example, was probably released a little bit later in the 2000s. The first retrograde will have been more towards the classic design. But it doesn't look out of place in a modern lineup, and that's what I love about it. And the other great thing about the retro sport is the price point. You can pick these up between 4K, and then obviously the sky's the limit with Gérald Genta. You can go quite a bit higher, but the retro sport tends to stick between 4K to 5.5K, for example. Then when you go to the Disneys, they're going to take, the fantasy range, they're going to take you up to like 15,000 in most cases, and then the classics can go anywhere between 4 and, again, sky's the limit, really, depending on if it's mother of pearls, diamond bezels. Gérald Genta really had fun with his watches. But Pam, you're a sports watch guy. I'm a vintage guy. This is what I would call neo vintage, maybe, but I could see you rocking this. I could see you liking this.
I do like it. The only thing is a bit round. I like it. I love the retrograde. I love the way the minute hand flicks back to 0 and the hour jumps. That you could just have hours, literally hours of fun with that. And the guilloche is nice as well. It's a very nice looking watch. I do think. What size is it? Is it 42, 44?
Most of them came in around 42 millimeter. I think there's some what maybe sit around 40 millimeter as well, depending on the collection.
Yeah, I think for 42, the roundness of it might be because there's no real contoured shape, and it's not a tapering bracelet. It's a very straight bracelet as well. But I love the function. I love watching these, and I love that dial. The only thing could possibly be the size, but apart from that, the round shape is okay. But for the size, I think it may be a bit overbearing on the wrist. But it's a lovely watch. It's super cool. I almost chose this one as well, but then it was the size that put me off.
It's funny, yeah. I think it's that classic thing with the Gérald Genta designs. Put it on your wrist, and you probably okay.
Yeah,
clicks.
probably. Yeah, more than likely.
I honestly think this would look pretty cool on you. I could see it being your style, but I could understand. I understand what you're saying. Is it maybe a bit too bulbous on the wrist?
Yeah.
Your wrist is bigger than mine, so if it looks too big on yours, then I'm a few notches below you on the wrist size. I come in at about 6.9.
Okay, I'm just 7.1, 7.2, something like that. So it just doesn't look that slim either. That was the only. Again, I don't like big chunks on my wrist.
They are a little thicker. They're not crazy thick. I wouldn't say they're any thicker than what, let's say, a modern Black Bay, for example.
They're quite big.
Running at 11 to 12
yeah.
millimeter, maybe, something like that. Possibly, I'd say it's around that.
But it looks different. The actual look is good. It's a cool, super cool watch, I got to say.
Yeah, it's a cool vibe.
Yeah,
and everybody has different preferences, but if you're looking for something what has some iconic history, being the first jumping hour with a retrograde function, it's a piece of history for your wrist, is that, and I think it's only going to appreciate again This isn't a final financial advice show. I'm not saying it from that perspective, so let's make that clear. But of course, LVMH Group has the Gérald Genta brand now. You have Gerald Charles. These designs are being pushed back out there, and there is that effect on the market. So I'm not saying buy it as an investment. I'm saying if you are interested in getting into owning a piece of Gérald Genta history for a reasonable price point, there's never been a better time, because there's only one direction I see the market in general on Gérald Genta watches going. I just think it's going to keep going up. It's getting more and more popular, not less and less. But yeah, back to the retro sport. I just think it's a cool vibe. I've been tempted to get one of these a few times. I haven't pulled the trigger, so maybe that says something, but maybe that's saying something because I've not had the opportunity to try one, not this particular reference. So maybe when I try it, it will click or it won't. So to be continued, I'd say on that one. But Pam, I'm curious, what's your second choice?
My second choice is my I never pick. So it is the Cartier Pasha. So I was very surprised to hear that this was a Genta design when I heard a while back. But I was like, wow, really? Because it was just so, I suppose strange is quite common for Genta, but it was just completely different. It was a watch that I wasn't expecting he had made. The thing about this is, there's a story behind this, and this is the funny part about this watch. So they say Louis Cartier actually made a piece unique for the Pasha of Marrakesh, which is royalty in Morocco. He had this one piece, nobody else saw it, and then in 1985, Gérald Genta created this and put it on the mass watch market. And so people flocked to buy it, thinking it was the watch that was the same that the Pasha of Marrakesh wore. How true that story is, there's a lot of controversy around it. But that aside, I just think it's such a unique design. Actually breaks tradition with Cartier. Cartier were called the master of shapes, and a round watch was very rare in the Cartier catalogue, and this kind of broke the mold. Genta broke the mold by making a new era of round-faced designs for them. But he kept the key features off the brand, so he still kept it nice and sophisticated and nice and fancy, shall we say. I love Cartier. I almost bought a Santos recently. I didn't. I wish I had now. But there's a magic about this brand. Okay, it could be called a fashion brand, but its association with watches as well is second to none. And what, to me, makes this extra special is there's an actual cover for the crown, which has the blue, sapphire blue cabochon on it. And you wind it off and it's got a little link holding it there. It's just so intricate and fancy. And the lugs are called Vendôme lugs. It just oozes, to me, class. A lot of people don't like this. We're going back into the Marmite section. So again, this is a very like or don't like. And I like a lot. My favorite one out of all of them is an 18 karat version with a moon phase. Moon phase being my favorite complication at the moment. It's just a beautiful dial. I believe that's 42, but just the way the lugs, and it curves around and sits on your wrist, it just looks imperious. It looks majestic, and I do just love this watch. You can pick one of these up on Chrono24, a modern one, for £14,400. Sorry, I corrected. It's 41 millimeter is the size. I'm not sure if I might have said 42, but it's 41 millimeter. And you can even pick up an older 80s version, which is 38 mil, if that's your choice. I would probably go for that one instead, but that's a quartz. That one has the moon phase at 12. The one I have picked, the modern one, has the moon phase at 6 and has a proper moon phase disc. The old school one has a gold disc that goes round. So it's not as intricate in design, which, with stars like the modern one has. Yeah, I like this. Just because there's a bit of controversy about the story, and with me, not everyone likes it, so that kind of draws me towards things, because when something's hyped, I'm kind of going, well, okay, but when it's something that it's not everyone's cup of tea, I kind of think, okay, that sounds interesting. So that's probably just a weird personality trait on my part. What do you reckon, Andy?
Yeah, I love Cartier, and that I equally love the Pasha as well. I think it's a great choice. I've got nothing more I could add than what you've already said about the Pasha. Did you like the one thing? Some of the references come with like the grate, what screws on
Oh, that
over the dial,
cage thing.
the cage. Would you rock one with the cage?
I'm not a big fan of that cage, that grate or the cage or whatever you want to call it. I just think it becomes a bit too fiddly. And I mean, this was actually
Yeah,
created to be a balance between luxury and sport. That's why they say Cartier really made it. Was there was a gap in the luxury stroke sport area. The Pasha bit was made up, but I don't know. It's just cool. I think maybe that's why I like it. It covers a couple of bases there. I love a bargain, so that could be a dress watch and a sports watch all in one.
easy. Yeah. So there's two things to take away then with the cage or the grill, whatever we wish to call it. So you can go two ways. You can go for the sporty element where it's to protect the dial when doing sports, or you could go a little more philosophical and look at it as the preciousness of time. So how protecting your time you have on this planet. But maybe that's my interpretation of how I would perceive it if I was wearing the Pasha, and how I'd like to use it as a reminder of the importance of time, not just the enjoyment of the timepiece itself. But that's it. Cartier makes you romantic. That's what the brand's all about, I think. So I think that captures it perfectly.
Yeah, it's just the romance of Cartier. Right, and so now this is your wild card. What have you
My
got here
wild
for us?
card. Yeah. Is it wild? I'm not sure, but maybe so.
Just before Andy mentions, all these pictures will be on our new website in the show notes. So open up our website, www.chronopassion7, the number 7.com, and you will see all of our show notes and the pictures of all of these watches. Sorry, Andy.
Absolutely. So we're gonna have to get used to that, but go to the website. You're going to love it. I really hope so. So getting into my third and final choice. Is it a wild card? Is it not? I'm not sure. Now the Gérald Genta success is my choice, and it's a reference what many people maybe didn't know for a while. Now it's getting quite hot, especially in the vintage collector circles. It's very, very popular. And I think again, it's one of those old hidden gems where maybe the train's just passed, unfortunately. However, not completely. You can still pick some of these up between 4K, 7K, 8K, and then all the way up to over 100K. It really depends on the reference you choose. One of the nicest references I have seen is a fully skeletonized perpetual calendar in 18 karat yellow gold. It being the show notes, it's absolutely incredible. And for me, it captures pretty much all of Gérald Genta's design cues all in one watch. If you was to say who is Gérald Genta, how can you encapsulate that in one watch? I think it's this, because it's so contemporary. It has the kind of just single lugs which connect and integrate into the strap. It has the octagonal case element there. It has the crown, what's got that kind of nautical feel to it. I just think it really captures the true essence of who Gérald Genta was in a watch. And I think this range was something quite precious to him. I know his personal success, I believe, was sold quite recently as well. 36mm, most of these iterations come in. Some will be quartz. The variety of movements in these, from anything from a fully skeletonized perpetual calendar, from a chronograph to a time only two-hander with a date function, and everything in between. The chronographs are really cool, really sporty on a bracelet. They're about 15K. You can pick up the ones on the leather bracelet if you're lucky enough to see one on the market for around 4K, which is a bargain. And on some of the successes, which I really like as well, on the actual crystal, it was diamond light finished. So it had the cut of a diamond effect on the actual crystal itself, similar to some of the vintage King Seikos of that era as well. And so beautiful, so cool. For me, I'd love to pick up one of those chronographs on the leather strap if I'm being realistic. There was one in my area, which it's before I had the Rolex. I think I was trying to negotiate a deal with a guy, but I just couldn't get it done, unfortunately. It's the way it goes, but it was a very good price. yeah, unfortunately that one, I needed to sell a watch to get it, and I couldn't sell the watch before that watch went. And that's how it goes. So if one comes up again, I'll be keeping an eye. But for me, I just think it's when somebody says Gérald Genta and you want to capture who he is in just one watch, that's a watch what I'd say that's who Gérald Genta was. It really captures his design, his artistry, his excitement for pushing the boundaries within what you can do with complications as well. Especially when you look at the fully skeletonized in yellow gold perpetual calendar. I mean, with leap year function, it's just and moon phase. Like, just drop the mic right there. Like, that's a grail. That's a grail piece right there, and it being the show notes. But does Pam have the same emotion when he sees a watch? That's my. What do you think to the success? For me, also, success is a great name. If you're rocking one of these, it's definitely a sign of success. But how do you find the pieces yourself, Pam?
Yeah, the name just goes to show you can buy a success. Yeah, for my wild card, I chose something very similar, which we hadn't coordinated, we hadn't planned on this, so I actually had to change mine. I like it's a dress watch with a complication, and it carries that Genta octagonal style design. It just ticks every box, like Andy said. And I think, again, one of the reasons why I chose the other one I did is this has got a perpetual calendar. A Genta watch, great design, deserves the greatest complication, which in my mind is the perpetual calendar. And it just encapsulates design genius and mechanical genius all in one. And it's got a moon phase as well, so I love it. So there you go, yeah.
So I think we both got the same emotion, and I'm glad it wasn't just me. So I just think that is Gérald Genta. You look at that. That is him.
And it's got those flanges in the link.
Don't forget the flange.
You don't forget the flanges. So you can see that on the website as well. You can see the flange.
www.chrono-7.com for all your daily flange needs.
Yeah, parental advisory, I think, viewing. Right. That's not my fault. That's Zach Weiss from Worn and Wound who came up with that. Right. So my wild card, before we take too much of your time, is now this is something I looked and I thought, okay, what's different? What could I find that not everyone will know about? And I found this watch, and not only had I not seen this before, it's so hard to actually find this for sale. I think I saw about 3. 2 of them had been sold. And it even says in one of the adverts, very rare. So this is a Gérald Genta 18-karat rose gold octo perpetual calendar. Like I was saying, it had to be a perpetual calendar. It needed that complication to match that superb design. So this one is very interesting. When you hear octo here, it's not just in terms of the octagon, but it looks a lot like our friend at Bulgari called the Octo Finissimo. And Gérald Genta, yes, was the originator of that design with this octo. He didn't design the Octo Finissimo, but the Octo Finissimo can be said to be accredited to the octo design that Gérald Genta did. And this one it's got so much going on. The subdials are octagons as well for the perpetual calendar dials. And there's a moon phase on there as well, of course, which we all know I love now. There's something this came out in the noughties, in the early to late noughties. I think that they'd stopped making them after that. But there's something check out the website to see this. It's gold, black, red, and a bit of white. My favorite combinations of colors are black and gold and black and red. And it captures that so well. It almost looks like a golden roulette table. There's something very casino-esque going on with it. It's got the markers, like the screws. There aren't screws, but it's got stud markers at every hour. So there's 12 on this bezel. So that makes it look so Genta. And it's just, when I look at this, I can't stop looking at it. There's so much to notice on it. It's got sword hands as well. It's got sword hands on the subdial. It's 42.5 millimeters in diameter, so it's not a massive watch. It's got a leather strap, which is kept on with our friend, the flange. And it's just, I don't know, have a look on the website. It's amazing. It looks like an Octo Finissimo with a gold casino theme going on with it, and just gear shade, sun rays coming out. You'll have a look at it. Even at the month dial at 3 o'clock, it almost got golden rays coming out from each corner. It's just something spectacular, something to behold, and a vision. Andy, I've been rambling on about this. I want to know what you think about it.
It's really funny because, when you're looking, it's great because I had time to really absorb the watch itself, and I'm getting a whole different, maybe it will click with you when I say it, but I'm getting a very strong Japanese vibe from this.
Yeah, the sun.
Yeah, the sun, and with
The
the
rays of
sword
the
hands
sun,
as
yeah.
well. Yeah. I love the detail on the sub dials as well for the calendar, for the days. Like, it's so intricate. Like, it's almost like pyramids as well, like stacked little pyramids, which is how Gérald Genta was doing a lot of his case designs as well. It's just incredible. There's no other way of putting it. And there was a Bulgari edition of these as well, where it was double signed. So I think that affirms that a connection with the Octo. I think that's their way of kind of their nod of gratitude from the original, Quite possibly. A fantastic choice, a great one to finish on. I think both our final choices really capture the true essence of Gérald Genta and his design traits through out of so many iconic, endless watches he's been involved with. Like, we didn't even mention the Constellation. Like, there's so many, and
so many, yeah.
The show be endless, but inspiring. Do I want the Gérald Genta watch now? Yes. Sorry to our listeners.
I think it's almost like I need a chronograph, I need a dress watch, I need a dive watch, I need a Genta. It's now become a category in its own right in a watch collection. Going back to this Octo Perpetual calendar, one last thing I want to explain to you. If in case you're driving your car and you shouldn't be looking at the show notes, or your focus is somewhere else, it looks like the Octo Finissimo went to Vegas and won big. There we go. That's what I say. That's what I say it looks like.
Yeah, it's a good way to round that one up. Fantastic choices. Really enjoyed the show. You just can't be a watch enthusiast and not get passionate once you really dig into the topic of Gérald Genta. And we're just touching the surface on this episode. But I think that's all we have time for today. Please check out the new website. So going to plug it again, www.chronopassion7.com. Make sure to drop your comments now underneath the show notes and let us know how you find the experience of the website. We really hope you enjoy the new platform. We want to enrich your listening and viewing experience. We're always open to your suggestions. Now we've got the comments where it's easy for you to just drop a quick comment on there. And we really look forward to engaging with you. We really appreciate your continued support. That has taken us to this phase 2 of our journey. It's quite crazy. So we're extremely grateful, extremely excited to see what you think to the new platform. So I will sign off. That is adios and hasta luego from Barcelona for this week.
And as Andy says farewell from Spain, check out the website. Let us know which your favorite pieces were as well, or let us know if there's anything we missed, like the Constellation, which we didn't miss because we know about it. But thank you so much again. Thank you all. And from London, it's Toodle Pip and Laters. And we'll see you and you'll hear us in the next one.